So, folks, the election in New York City, the primary, which is basically the election for the New York City mayor's race, is on June 24th. It's currently June 21st, so hopefully this video gets out. I think this video will get out before the election, but early voting, I believe, ends on the 22nd, so tomorrow. So by the time you all will be seeing this in the YouTube segments, it'll be after early voting is closed. But there will still be enough time for you to sign up to phone bank and door knock for Zohran Mamdani. So I encourage you all to do that. You can go over to his website, zohran4nyc.com, and you can volunteer there. They're doing an intense door knocking and phone calling campaign. And the more people we can get involved with that, the better. So, again, that is zohran4nyc.com. Let's take a look at one of the final campaign ads here.
We're so close to Election Day, but believe it or not, the hardest days of this race are yet to come. Because right now, Andrew Cuomo and his billionaire allies are spending millions of dollars to try and defeat our movement. Cuomo's super PAC has dumped $5 million in the last week alone, lying about me and my policies. And there's at least another $5 million coming. For the next 9 days, you won't be able to turn on your TV, check your mail, or even watch a YouTube video without seeing them. But if you look at the box at the bottom of those ads, you'll see who's bankrolling them. Billionaires and corporations. The same people who put Donald Trump back in the White House are now trying to elect Andrew Cuomo.
Yep.
They're spending all this money for a very simple reason. Corporations don't want to pay just a little bit more in taxes to make a better city for all of us. The landlord lobby knows I'm going to freeze your rent. And Trump's donors know I will actually fight this authoritarian regime. How do we fight back? Through our most powerful tool, you. That's why in these final days, I'm asking you to knock on as many doors as you can. And what's that? For our out-of-state friends, we're asking you to make as many phone calls as possible.
That's right. You don't have to live in New York City to make phone calls. You can phone in and help Zohran's campaign from anywhere in the country. So again, please consider doing that. It's very important.
You have the power to set the record straight. These next few days are going to be a fight, but it's one worth having, and one we can win together.
Hell yeah. This man just fills me with hope, you know? And I've already seen comments in chat today prior to even starting this segment about how people are just being flooded with anti-Zohran Mamdani ads. And it is, it's wild. Like the advertising ecosystem of New York City is completely bonkers right now when it comes to politics. And so it is really important for people to get out there and volunteer and knock on doors and push back on this narrative. It's really important for people to phone bank and tell people why it's important to vote for Zohran Mamdani. Most people, when they hear about Zohran Mamdani and his policies, go, "Oh yeah, that is a lot better." You know, the only reason I was going to vote for Andrew Cuomo was because I recognized his name. And that's literally it. That's literally it. So get out there, do what you can, because and here we roll into the main body of the segment. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Always help out the channel. But the main body of the segment here is that the corporate media, the mainstream media, is doing its best, along with this advertising campaign, this advertising blitz by Andrew Cuomo's super PACs. The mainstream media is doing their best to turn Zohran Mamdani into a Bernie Sanders 2.0, but not in like a good way. In like a 2016 getting screwed over by the coverage. In the 2016 people are out there calling him an anti-Semite kind of way. And it's it's very interesting to see happen again at the drop of a hat. You know, the second someone comes along saying, "Hey, what about policies for the working class? What if we, helped out people who need like a break from rent hikes? What if we helped out people in food deserts? What if we helped out people by making buses free so they could get to work and and we'd save money?" Someone like that comes along and suddenly all the major news outlets are just it's it's wild here. Let's just take a look at some of them, right? This one has been doing the rounds on social media for a bit here. New York is not a democracy. Too few voters are choosing the next mayor, by Annie Lowry. Who, by the way, Annie Lowry also wrote that Atlantic piece about how eggs should be more expensive, which, you know, it's just kind of nuts. But basically, the general thrust of this Atlantic piece is that ranked choice voting is actually robbing you of your democratic choices as opposed to first past the post, which, for those of you who aren't up on your political terminology, the first past the post is just whoever gets the most votes wins, as opposed to ranked choice, which allows people to weight their vote towards a number of different candidates. And as those candidates get taken off the ballot because they didn't get enough votes, votes then go to the subsequently ranked candidate. It's inherently a more representative system of your politics and your choices, more so than first past the post. You know, it's one of those voting systems that allows for a multi-party system to kind of come into being when you change how voting happens, right? And what winds up happening here is that ranked choice voting does have flaws. You know, there are a number of different ways to tally up votes. There are a number of different ways to, say like do different types of ranked choice voting. It's complicated. The math is out there. You can find it. There's a pretty good video. I forget who did it, but of a breakdown of different ways of tallying votes. It's a whole thing. But ranked choice voting, in my mind, head and shoulders better than first past the post. So anyone trying to sell you on that is wild. Let me see here. Oh, I'm not making any predictions here, Baron. I'm not making predictions on this one. This is kind of an anything goes type of situation. It's way too close. And in this particular circumstance, I am no longer under the illusion or delusion that the DNC has something up its sleeve. They're working with an empty deck. Let's see. Were people seriously calling Bernie Sanders anti-Semitic? He's ethnically Jewish? Yes, they were. In most parts of the country, this June is a moment of quiescence in the campaign cycle. The president has just been inaugurated. Many House and Senate candidates haven't declared yet. Homes are unmolested by flyers. Television watchers are unbothered by advertisements. But it's a different story in New York City, where former Governor Andrew Cuomo is in an improbably close race for mayor with Zohran Mamdani, a 33-year-old Democratic socialist and member of the state assembly. In recent weeks, Cuomo has whipped up a cowbell-ringing member of the Carpenters Union in Hudson Square, and Mamdani has railed against corporate power in a church in the West Village. They traded barbs with smiles on a debate stage before marching down Fifth Avenue in the National Puerto Rican Day Parade. They are leading a field of a dozen mayoral candidates who will face off in a ranked choice election for the Democratic primary on June 24th. Because the city has 6 times as many registered Democrats as registered Republicans, the Democratic primary is generally the de facto mayoral election. True. Instead of picking one person to lead the city, voters will rank up to 5 candidates, blah, 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 blah. All right. Cuomo is likely to get more first-choice votes than any other candidate, but he's not projected to win an outright majority, meaning that the ranked choice system will kick in. Candidate after candidate would get knocked off, and their supporters' votes reapportioned. In the end, the political scion with a multi-million-dollar war chest and a blanket name recognition could lose to the young millennial whom few New Yorkers had heard of as of last year. Cuomo's got a fat resume. He was Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under Bill Clinton, Attorney General of New York, Governor of New York. His centrist but decidedly Democratic politics probably best match the city's constituents. He's promising good schools, a working subway, tax cuts, and more housing while bashing other candidates for failing to support the police and being soft on anti-Semitism. And I just really want to point out here that, like, saying that this is like this is a centrist position, it's just not. You know, like, everyone is in favor of good schools, working subways, and more housing. The thing that stands out to me as unique is tax cuts. and failing to support the police and being soft on anti-Semitism as accusations, right? And it's just like there's literally no there's no daylight there. Like that's exactly what a Republican would do in this race. To be completely and utterly honest with you, Andrew Cuomo is running in this race as a Republican. Just understand that that is the dynamic here. Okay? He wants to give tax cuts to the wealthiest members of the city. That's why the city's social elite tend to support him. And it's why they're so afraid of Zohran Mamdani's pro-working class policies. He's got a ton of money, having garnered $3.9 million in direct donations and the support of a $13 million super PAC. Its biggest donor is DoorDash, because Andrew Cuomo isn't going to do anything about the DoorDash issues, because Zohran Mamdani has talked about wanting to impose regulations that would, ensure like fair treatment of DoorDash delivery workers, so they aren't encouraged and incentivized by the company to skirt traffic laws. Still, it would be hard to overstate how many people hate the guy and how much. Cuomo's got a glowering hothead and an unreformed bully who resigned from governorship in 2021 after nearly a dozen women made sexual harassment claims against him and a scandal erupted over nursing home deaths related to his COVID policies. He regrets quitting. Again, this is such a weird way of framing. Yeah, his number one issue, he's got a glowering hothead and he's a bully. We're literally talking about a guy who was pestering his employees to have sex with him. 12 former employees? 12 former... I'm sorry. That should be maybe if you're abusing your leadership to try and sleep with women, that's probably a sign you shouldn't be in leadership. I don't know, if you told me, hey, this guy has, I'm just, hypothetically, I'm not talking about Andrew Cuomo, but if somebody in the media was like, this guy has raped 12 women, but he's got some killer tax cut policies, the fact that anyone would still consider voting for him is fucking crazy. And Andrew Cuomo pressured 12 of his employees to have sex with him, over a dozen. He also sent the elderly who were infected with COVID back into nursing homes, and it resulted in a lot of the elderly of New York City dying during the pandemic. And so it's wild to me that oh no, his number one issue is that he's a hothead and a bully. He got people killed and abused his power to try and sleep with his employees. Those are some pretty severe issues to just kind of gloss over here. He swooped into the mayoral race when it was clear there was no strong frontrunner. He carpetbagged in too. Until recently, Cuomo was living in Westchester County, as philosophically distant from the city as it is physically proximate. He's now bunking in his daughter's $8,000 a month apartment in Midtown East. When he was asked about his bagel order, he said he gets an English muffin. What's wrong with you? When you're asked about your bagel order, you talk about what you get on a bagel, not that you order an English muffin. If you're asked about a bagel, tell them about bagels. God, it's so gross. Bagel Rabbit, hello. Welcome. Yes, priority numero uno for me, I imagine. I bet you'd be pretty wary if someone told you they'd want a rabbit on a bagel. It would puts a target right on your back. I mean, I like English muffins too, but if somebody asks me for my bagel order, I'm not telling them I get an English muffin. You don't even have to, part of the reason I'm making a big deal about this is because it is a big deal in New York. Bagels are a big deal in New York City. And if you are someone who wants to be mayor of New York City, one of the things you have to do is you have to have a favorite bagel order. And that's one of the most basic softball things you would figure out if you wanted to run to be mayor. Honestly, being a New Yorker and not eating bagels is more anti-Semitic than anything Zohran ever did, right? But let's keep going here. Mamdani is Cuomo's rumpled, earnest foil. His resume is thin. He worked as a campaign operative for a few years before winning a state assembly seat in 2020. He's a leftist. Like, this is crazy, right? He was a campaign operative. He won like $500 million for like cab drivers. I don't know. That's pretty impressive for a state assemblyman. Okay, that's pretty impressive. But no mention of that here. He's a leftist in the Bernie Sanders mold with a raft of great sounding policies: free buses, free childcare, cheap groceries, frozen rents. But a lot of these are impractical at best. Free buses would deprive the MTA of needed revenue. Except, let's back that up. Free buses would deprive the MTA of a marginal amount of revenue. However, it's important to look at how much money is spent trying to get that revenue that we're getting now. How much is spent in order to enforce fares on buses? Because it's a lot of money. A lot of money is spent like going after people who aren't like paying their bus fare, or and time is lost with people trying to pay their bus fare or failing to pay their bus fare and trying to negotiate with drivers. And it's just that we don't need to do that, actually. Plenty of cities across America have made their buses free. And almost in every case, I haven't heard of one where it's gone poorly, but in almost every case it has gone exceedingly well, okay? Yeah, exactly, Gay Fesh. You could take all the money you spend on cops and subways and just put that towards funding the transit itself. Exactly. And free childcare. Yes, free childcare is good because it frees up people to go to work. Like, I'm sorry, but if you pay, like, a handful of people to watch kids during the day so that their parents can go to work, that increases your productivity. It increases your tax base. It pays for itself, essentially. And it increases the output of the city, how much the city produces. Overall, these are things that improve the city's productivity, okay? And improve quality of life. Now, cheap groceries. There are places in New York where it's hard to find a place to buy groceries because the grocery stores deem it as not profitable enough to open there. So what do you do in that circumstance? Well, historically, the city has offered subsidies to grocery stores. However, those subsidies could simply be spent on opening the city's own grocery stores in order to actually, provide food essentially at cost without a need to run at a profit. So, like, there are some pretty logical arguments here, actually. And there are a number of cities across America that have done exactly what Zohran Mamdani is proposing. And they're not, like, big cities either, necessarily. Though some of them are in big cities. Some of them are in, like, podunk middle of nowhere, where, like, it's a rural town in Kansas where the Walmart pulled out because people just didn't have enough money to, like, go shop at Walmart. Because, and you know this if you've ever been familiar with a rural area, what winds up happening with a Walmart is it rolls into town, opens up, undercuts all of the prices from the mom and pop stores in town, runs them out of business, and then, once they have no competition, they raise their prices. They essentially create localized monopolies. And that's a big problem. Like, not only does it cut down on the diversity of, like, small town America, but it also, like, destroys local economies. And when suddenly that area might become too poor to, make financial sense for Walmart to have that store there, once they've squeezed all of the money out of that rural area, what do? They close up shop. And they have an agreement with the city that, like, oh, you can't get anyone else to open up in this store, or you have to wait 10 years until you can, like, lease out this space again. And so it just sits empty, a gigantic empty lot, And the issue here is that then leaves no grocery stores except for maybe gas stations in the local area. So some of these rural towns have banded together, opened up municipal grocery stores so that residents can continue to eat food and have good food that is cheap, okay? Additionally, this has been done in larger cities. I believe Milwaukee has, like, 2. I think Chicago's looking into opening a couple. There are so many places in America where this is becoming a necessity, And it's not some pie-in-the-sky idea to run a grocery store without a profit motive.
Interest in Zohran Mamdani.
Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. Also, Decipher, thank you for becoming a member over on YouTube. Appreciate it. So, all this, like, these are not pie-in-the-sky ideas. These are grounded and practical approaches to real-world problems that exist right now. The answer to these problems is not simply throwing more money at police. The police budget in New York City dwarfs the budget of, like, some small countries. You know, like, it's nuts. Cheap, let's see. Free childcare would require a mammoth tax hike that Albany would need to approve, which it has shown no interest in doing. Cheap groceries, Mamdani says, could be provided by new city-run stores, which would compete with existing bodegas, delis, and supermarkets owned and staffed by New Yorkers. Except that they wouldn't when we're talking about food deserts. A rent freeze would help people who live in rent-controlled apartments but inhibit housing construction, making the cost of living crisis worse. How would it, I love this. Like, just definitive statements, but, like, absolutely no citation whatsoever to back up this claim. I have no idea how a rent freeze would inhibit new housing construction, especially when he's openly talked about creating programs to build hundreds of thousands of new housing units. So, also, this line is what made this article go viral. One thing the candidates share, I suppose, is that both get accused of being Nepo babies. Mamdani's mother made the 1991 indie romance Mississippi Masala. Cuomo's father was governor of New York. And can I just, like, pause and say, there's a big... I've never heard of Mississippi Masala in my life. I have, however, heard of the state of New York. I'm not familiar with Mississippi Masala. I bet it's a great indie film. I'll probably check it out at some point after this election cycle, but, I think being the governor of the state in which this election is happening, and being the son of the governor of the state in which this election is happening, is a lot more relevant as, like, a Nepo baby accusation than your mom made an indie film. Like, that's nuts. I don't understand how you arrive at this comparison at all. Like, it then goes on to say Mamdani doesn't have big money personally or politically, and he doesn't have great name recognition. Two of the things that would help you if you were a Nepo baby. Usually when people talk about someone being a Nepo baby, it's because they have access to the resources of their parent and the social connections of their parent and the name recognition of their parent, and none of that is stuff that Mamdani has. Like, it's insane that this article passed muster. God, a quarter of New Yorkers say they don't know enough about him to have formed an opinion. Yet polls indicate that 4 times as many New Yorkers like Mamdani as dislike him, which is insane. 4 times more people like him?
Even if 0 of his policies make it to passing, he's still way ahead of both Adams and Cuomo in both unwillingness to work with ICE, charisma, and general ethos.
Absolutely, Sake Tanuki. Thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. He's dominating the social media primary. Oh, baby, this is how he's a Nepo baby. He's a Nepo baby because he inherited his mom's 1991 social media presence. All of the social media that was happening in 2021. Or, not 2021, 1991. God. Churning out sweetly dorky TikToks and Instagram posts. Mamdani doesn't jump on trends or join in memes, he just posts. It works. His campaign has an astonishing ground game. His volunteers are knocking on 100,000 doors a week. And you know what? That's chump change. Go to zohranfornyc.com and volunteer to knock on more doors. By the time this video comes out, you'll have like 2 days. Get on it, folks. Get on it, all right? Yeah, exactly, Andrew. Like, if he has a likability rating 4 times the number of people who dislike him, he's got like what? Like 10% of people who learn about him dislike him? That's crazy. And it's also, it's just nuts. It's just nuts that, like, again, just in passing, it's mentioned that Andrew Cuomo is a sex pest and killed people in nursing homes, murdered grandmas. And it's just like no one like it's glossed over. At no point is it talked about again. It's crazy. Mamdani has countered by arguing again, not incorrectly, that Cuomo is beholden to the city's millionaires and billionaires. I don't have experience with corrupt Trump billionaires who are funded by my campaign, he said. I do have experience, however, with winning $450 million in debt relief for thousands of working class taxi drivers, which, hey, maybe that'd be something to address in the body of the article. That's like a crazy quote to throw out there and then provide no context for in this article. It does read like satire. It's true. Cynicism Inc. It really depends on the polls you see. Some of Zohran's internal polling is pretty rosy and has him up by 4 or 5 points over Cuomo. A lot of the other polling that's come out has shown Cuomo ahead by anywhere from 7 to 10 points. I think in one 6. So it really, really depends. The race is close enough. The ad blitz could actually be having an effect, Also, just without ranked choice voting, Cuomo would probably steamroll his competition. With ranked choice voting, Mamdani could defeat him. In Data for Progress's recent poll, 37% of voters ranked Cuomo first and 31% ranked Mamdani first. But as the weakest candidates were knocked out and their votes redistributed, Mamdani closed the gap. Other simulations show Cuomo has a greater margin of victory, but the general pattern is the same. Yeah, the issue here, right, is that the momentum is on Zohran's side. 2 months ago, he was down by 40 points. Now, he's either up, depending on which polls you look at, he's either up by 5 or down by 6 to 10 points. He's really, really closed the gap. And there is a decent chance that, the next day or so is going to really decide the election. So, again, that is why I'm saying, if you are supportive of Zohran Mamdani, now is the time to, volunteer to phone bank and volunteer to knock doors, okay? You can phone bank from anywhere in the country. All you got to do is sign up. You can do it online. They give you a script. It's super easy. I promise you, you will not regret volunteering to phone bank. It's also not a huge time investment. That being said, y'all should do that. Also, Kairos Rev, thank you very much for the raid. Welcome, folks. I have to assume that even the most apolitical NIMBY dipshit in New York is utterly sick of Cuomo shit. One would imagine, and yet. Yeah, the article keeps going, by the way, and I'm not going to read the entire thing, but it is absolutely dog shit. And if any of you would like to read the full thing, I'll link it here in chat. So you can get as mad as I did when I read about it. It's in the ideas section of The Atlantic. It's maybe one of their high-level ideas. It's not the only hit piece that has come out against Zohran Mamdani, okay? Let's take a look at this one from the New York Times editorial board. If you're not familiar with the New York Times, they're kind of a big deal in New York City. Oddly enough, weird how that works out. But last year, in 2024, the editorial board said, we're no longer going to endorse in the mayoral race. We're going to stop making endorsements and that's why it struck me as so weird that the New York Times put out this editorial board piece, which, since it's from the editorial board, there's no one author, of course. Our advice to voters in a vexing race for New York mayor. Is it really that vexing? I don't think so, actually. Many longtime New Yorkers have had a sinking feeling at some point in the past decade. They've worried that their city was heading back to the bad old days of the 70s and 80s. Subway trips can have a chaotic or even menacing quality. And let me stop you right there, okay? Let me stop you right there. There are billions of people who, billions of, passengers on the New York City subway system. And there is maybe, a handful of, crimes and murders that occur, in the subway system. Exponentially more people in New York City die driving to work. Exponentially more. It's not even close. Right? But the claim subway trips can have a chaotic or even menacing quality. I've been to New York and ridden on the subways. I've felt safe every single time I've ridden on the subway. The one time I didn't feel safe was because of like cops being assholes in the subway system. That's it. The only people who made me feel less safe on the subway were cops. And it's just, I'm sorry, if you're afraid of riding the subway, a vehicle in New York City that literal children use every day to go to school, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, I don't know, like, it's wild to me that it's just socially acceptable when it comes to New York City to act like the scariest thing you've ever experienced is something that children just do every day 100% safely. It's nuts.
This is anti-city propaganda.
It is anti-city propaganda from people who live in the city. It's nuts. It's specifically from the people who want to turn their city into like a Disney World, you know? It's from these rich, out-of-touch losers who are afraid of interacting with normal working-class people on the subway. And they just want to change the entire city until it's basically a fake place. You know? They want to turn it into
The perception
Disney
of
World.
danger is not the same as danger. This is why we research these things.
Exactly, Sake Tanuki. Because the perception of safety is not the same as actual safety, and the perception of danger is not the same as actual danger. The New York Times is complicit with building up and creating that perception of danger. The same with Mayor Eric Adams, when he's been talking about the need for police to be on the subway system, you know, and to beef up police presence on there, while talking simultaneously about how, like, the New York City subway is, like, the safest in the world. And it's just like, well, it's not safe. It's not the safest because the police are there. You're talking about how dangerous it is all the time, which is why people then have the perception that it's dangerous, and then you put the police there, and it's just kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mr. Malachite, it does really boil down to the vibes are bad because poor people. Exactly. Nearly half of bus riders board without paying their fares, which, you know, would be solved if we got rid of fares. As an FYI, that's a solvable problem. The number of felony assaults has jumped more than 40% over the past decade. You know, let's just take. I'm so curious. In the year 2000, 25,924, and in 2024, 29,461. And what's really interesting about that is it looks like it's directly applicable to the pandemic. You can literally see in the data here on assaults that it hovers around 20,000 until 2021, and then suddenly it starts jumping up. Almost like a bunch of people got desperate and started committing more assaults in order to try and, you know, do robberies and such to keep themselves alive. Kind of like it's related to economic hardship. I don't know. I just spitballing here. That seems to be the big factor here. The uptick in the assaults on the subway. The city's fourth graders, after significantly outperforming their peers in other large cities during the early 2000s, have fallen back in math and reading. I wonder if that's because of Andrew Cuomo defunding schools. I wonder if that's part of the reason Andrew Cuomo cut the school budgets. Housing has become even less affordable and homelessness has risen. In the most basic measure of the city's appeal, the population remains well below its pre-COVID peak. We believe that New York City is the world's most dynamic and important city thanks to its energy, diversity, creativity, prosperity, and history. And though some of, don't get any of the creativity, energy, diversity, etc. on you in the subway, I guess, in the eyes of this writer. And though some of the complaints about the city today are overstated, we are also worried. The quality of life has deteriorated over the past decade. On some issues like crime rates, the city has recovered modestly over the past few years and remains in far better shape than it was 50 years ago. Still, New Yorkers deserve better than the status quo. Against this background, the city has begun voting for mayor in the Democratic primary. Yada, yada, yada. Da, da, da. Just talking about different mayors. Let's get to the actual meat of this. 11 candidates are competing for the Democratic nomination, and many New Yorkers are understandably disappointed by the field. It lacks any candidate that seems likely to be the city's next great mayor. For that reason, we are not endorsing a candidate. That said, several candidates have substantial strengths. This editorial, which follows our publication of The Choice, a feature that shared the insights of a diverse mix of New Yorkers, is meant to offer guidance from New Yorkers trying to think through their imperfect options. So let's take a look. Andrew Cuomo, a former governor and federal housing secretary, and Zohran Mamdani, a state legislator who represents a Queens district. Mr. Mamdani, a charismatic 33-year-old, is running a joyful campaign full of viral videos in which he talks with voters. He offers the kind of fresh political style for which many people are hungry during the angry era of President Trump. That's the thing you latch onto as most important? That, like, he smiles in his campaign videos? Okay. Unfortunately, Mr. Mamdani is running on an agenda uniquely unsuited to the city's challenges. He is a democratic socialist who too often ignores the unavoidable trade-offs of governance. Which I would love. Can you elaborate on that, New York Times? Can you what unavoidable trade-offs? The unavoidable trade-off of taking corporate money? That's what they're putting out there, right? The unavoidable trade-off of being compromised in your pro-working class vision by capital. Right? Like, that's what they mean. That's nuts. But anyway, he favors rent freezes that could restrict housing supply and make it harder for younger New Yorkers and new arrivals to afford housing. A rent freeze wouldn't do that, because it's a rent freeze. The rent is frozen at where it's at right now. How is that going to make it more difficult? Are you thinking that it's going to make if not for the rent freeze, the rent would have gone down. You know, all of the landlords pouring millions of dollars into Andrew Cuomo's campaign would have just out of the goodness of their hearts lowered rents. But also, he has a plan to build 200,000 more units and a plan to, like, take away regulations around some zoning or change some zoning stuff so that private corporations can, in fact, build more units to incentivize that. So, like, I don't know. That seems kind of like you just don't understand his policy. That's one possibility. Or the other policy is that they are simply lying. That might be one possibility. That might be the other one. That the New York Times is just willfully ignorant of the fact. He wants the government to operate grocery stores as if customer service and retail sales were strengths of the public sector. Yeah, ignore the fact that, like, dozens of other cities across the United States have done exactly the same thing with great results. Like, I'm sorry. Also, the government having customer service. Imagine. Yeah. Like, I don't know about you guys, but, like, I've had pretty decent interactions with, like, government bureaucrats who want to help me through the system. So, like, I don't. Again, like, people tend to be nice. They want to help people. Yeah, if people are coming into a grocery store to buy food, like, I'm sorry, but, like, can we just back up? Like, customer service, realistically, are you expecting at a grocery store? What fancy schmancy grocery store do these people go to, if they even go to a grocery store, where, like, I don't know, like a grocery clerk, like, runs up to their car. What can I get you today? It would be my honor to serve as your footstool. Please, let me get all of the things you like. And that's just not how it goes. You know, like, you go into the grocery store, you pick up the food, check out, and then you go. Sometimes some places will help like bring out your groceries. You can order ahead to, like, have them set aside, but there's nothing inherent to any of those that, like, a publicly owned grocery store wouldn't be able to do. I'm sorry. I don't really see how this is outside of the reach. Like, to me, it blows my mind to see, like, one of the most reputable mainstream outlets in a country where we put people on the moon. We shot people up into the sky in rockets, into outer space, to the moon, landed them there. They spent a couple days there, and then they came back home. We did that multiple times. And you're telling me that it's just too hard for the government to operate a grocery store? Motherfucker, we put people on the moon multiple times in the 1960s. 60 years ago. We can absolutely run a goddamn grocery store. NASA sent people to the moon in a cave. Yeah, I understand the reference. Oh, God. But I think this last one is the most damning of all. He minimizes the importance of policing. You know, this is why I think rhetorically he's really, really good on this when people see him and they like him. That's why they add his, like, takes on policing as, like, an attack. Because they don't want you to seek out his actual quotes and his actual stances on it, you know? Because it hits a lot harder for a liberal who has no idea who this candidate is when they hear, oh, he minimizes the importance of policing, versus you hear his actual answer. And his actual answer is, I've talked with cops. They want to be doing, like, more, you know, things that cops should be doing versus acting as, like, a nanny or a nurse or, like, a psychologist. We should, in fact, have a specialized department that takes care of those things rather than using police resources on that, you know? Police shouldn't be doing mental health checks. We should have people trained in mental health doing that.
Mamdani wanted to ease and end periods, but the NYT accused him of practicing communism.
Oh, God. That pun hurt, Saki Tanuki. Thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs, though. I very, very much appreciate the support. Most worrisome, he shows little concern about the disorder of the past decade, even though its costs have fallen hardest on the city's working class and poor residents. Mr. Mamdani, who has called Mr. de Blasio the best New York mayor of his lifetime, offers an agenda that remains alluring among elite progressives, but has proved damaging to city life. What does this mean? He shows little concern about the disorder of the past decade. Just out of curiosity, who was governor of New York during the past decade? Anyone want to take a stab? Anyone want to take a stab? Would it be who could it possibly be? It's fucking Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo was mayor of New York from 2011 to 2021, guys. Yeah, he's shown no concern outside of attacking the guy who is in charge of the state. Okay, this is the most worrisome point that they have, and it's just that he doesn't show the concern. He offers an agenda that is alluring to elite progressives, but has proved damaging to city life, except that they haven't demonstrated where it's damaging. They haven't shown where it's damaging. They haven't shown where, like, I don't know. It's nuts to me. The poor argumentation in this piece is wild. Mr. Mamdani would also bring less relevant experience than perhaps any mayor in New York City history. He's never run a government department or private organization of any, except that he's literally a member of the state legislature. So I don't know. I feel like these attacks are weird considering he has like 5 years of experience in politics in the state and, you know, far more experience in like actual organizing work in the city. But okay. As a state legislator, he has struggled to execute his own agenda. A telling example came last year. Given an opportunity to expand a pilot program offering free bus rides, one of his signature issues, he instead engaged in a performative protest that doomed the policy, New York Magazine reported. Well, let's take a look at that. This is why people are becoming more illiterate. All the paywalls. I'm unaware of what this performative protest is. I'm gonna Google it. Let's do a little Google foo. All right. Donnie protest free buses. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Let's move right along because frankly, the performative protest doomed the policy. Seems to lack the political savvy and instinct for compromise that has made Senator Bernie Sanders, his fellow Democratic socialist, an effective legislator. Except that Bernie hasn't compromised. Like Bernie is literally known for being consistent in his ideological beliefs and not being compromised. But okay. All right. The other frontrunner, Mr. Cuomo, has his own significant shortcomings. He resigned as governor in 2021 during his third term because of allegations of sexual harassment or inappropriate touching from at least 11 women. This board called for his resignation at the time because of the disturbing, credible nature of the allegations. We noted his treatment of women was part of a larger pattern of bullying, self-preserving behavior. Like, I'm sorry. You can't... You literally didn't want him to be governor anymore, and now you're saying, but he can be mayor of New York City. That's crazy. That's crazy. This is like insanity. You know, when we're talking about this, when we're talking about the corporate media effort to like bury Zohran Mamdani, to like have all the knives out for him, just like they did for Bernie in 2016. This is what I'm talking about. Inappropriate touching, that's sexual assault. You know, like, I'm sorry, inappropriate touching, that's sexual assault. And you're like, well, you know, we called for his resignation, but like you're willing to call for his resignation as governor of New York, almost said New York City. But, you know, well, a lot of people are planning to vote for him anyway. Like, are you fucking kidding me? On the one hand, we have this guy who seems well-intentioned and has a lot of popular policies and 4 times the approval of his disapproval rating. And also everyone who finds out about him thinks that he's great compared to his, you know, Andrew Cuomo. But, you know, it's really an either or here. We can't come to any definitive conclusions. That's nuts. Oh, Rainbow Krampus. I guess I missed the loophole in New York City for the New York City mayoral seat, which is that I guess you can just get away with sexual assault if you're, you know, the mayor of New York City. Apparently. That's a joke. You shouldn't be able to get away with that.
I've canvassed 4 times for Mamdani. I'm doing a phone bank tonight. If he doesn't win, I'm morbing out.
Hell yeah, Sake Tanuki. Thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs, and thank you for phone banking and canvassing. Everyone else should do it too, okay? All you gotta do, folks, all you gotta do is go to zohranfornyc.com, and you can just click this little volunteer tab, and bada bing, bada boom. There you go. Nailed it. In fact, I'm just gonna copy this and send it out into all your little chats. There we go. There you go. But let's continue on here, because this is just, it drives me nuts. His list of accomplishments includes paid family leave, expanded health insurance, a higher minimum wage, a marriage equality law, a strict gun control law, an ambitious clean energy program, the 2nd Avenue subway, and renovations of John F. Kennedy and LaGuardia airports in Penn Station. He also made significant mistakes, such as his mishandling of COVID at nursing homes, which again, when they say mishandling of COVID at nursing homes, it means he gave the green light to nursing homes to pack the elderly in who were COVID positive, meaning that then COVID killed the elderly in the nursing homes. It's not just a mishandling. He prioritized profit over people.
Think of this idea. A parody news site similar to The Onion. It would give a positive view on corporations and conservatives, but in a way that is satirical and shows their evil.
Oh, like The Onion's version of the Wall Street Journal? I think that'd be good. I think that has potential. And poor management of public transit. Still, Mr. Cuomo has the strongest policy record of the candidates. Can I just... Okay, look. What drives me nuts is that I've been paying attention to this race, okay? And one of the things that Andrew Cuomo did right after announcing he was entering the race was he released a bunch of policy proposals written by AI. Like, just blatantly written by AI with no editing whatsoever. And there were little whoopsie doodles all over that policy, riddled throughout it. I forget which policy it was. Let me just let's take a look. Andrew Cuomo. AI policy. Yeah, this is, by the way, how the New York Times covered it. Cuomo announces a new housing plan with a hint of ChatGPT. It's a 29-page housing plan, included a garbled section with incomplete sentences and a link to a citation retrieved by ChatGPT. Meaning the entire thing was written by ChatGPT, you know?
Cuomo can't even spit bars. If young Cardamom wins and doesn't do at least one press conference in full lyrics, I'll be very disappointed.
Oh god, can you imagine how fucking cool Zohran Mamdani would be as mayor of NYC? It'd be so cool. Yeah, don't write that headline like you think it's quirky. You cared so little about your housing plan that you had ChatGPT write it, and then you didn't even bother to have someone edit it. And so, like, I just they don't even mention it in like talking about the knocks against him. He has the strongest policy record. Does he? Does he though? Like, can you say that about someone who cares so little about this race that they're having ChatGPT write their policies? God, he's won the most impressive collection of endorsements too, including from Mr. Bloomberg. Yeah, Michael Bloomberg, definitely not known as a nincompoop. Jessica Ramos, which what a disappointment. What an absolute disappointment. And labor unions representing healthcare workers, hotel workers, blue-collar laborers, and firefighters, which, by the way, Zohran Mamdani also has a bunch of nominations from unions, progressive groups, but they didn't list that amongst his accomplishments. We have a lot to talk about. Going through this entire thing would be a great idea. I'm going to link it so you guys can check it out if you would like. But the corporate media has knives out for this guy. And let me pull up this. In his Pod Save America appearance, you know, for all intents and purposes, the Pod Save America crew was pretty all right with him, though clearly skeptical and slightly hostile. The most hostile part of this interview happens at around the 19-minute mark, and I'm gonna play it for you guys. And I find it a bit gross, to say the least. But we're gonna take a look.
So we talked about LaGuardia and sort of the sort of multi-ethnic, multiracial coalition. You've been getting there was a very I think very stupid moment during the debate where you were pressed, where everyone was saying where they're going to visit first as mayor. And they all said Israel. You said you're going to stick around New York and focus on New York, which makes sense to me. We had a controversy in Los Angeles. Our mayor was abroad. I don't understand why anyone gives a fuck where our mayors go abroad. Stupid to me. Somebody posted this video, and I wanted you to see it because I thought it was very funny.
Hey Anu, where are we going for dinner?
Sushi or...
I noticed you didn't say Tel Aviv. Now tell me, do you believe in Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state? What is it like being a raging anti-Semite? Do you plan on visiting Israel anytime in the next few days?
So I think,
like, the thing is, he seems really uncomfortable, and to me what this reads as is softening up Mamdani for what he's actually about to ask.
I think that to me captures how dumb a lot of this has become, and how much I think fear-mongering there is about you and what you would actually do. So can you just talk a little bit about what you actually would do to face anti-Semitism in New York?
Yeah, I appreciate this because there's, as you've said, been so many mischaracterizations and misconceptions. And frankly, they've been fueled by candidates like Andrew Cuomo, who just yesterday it was revealed his super PAC had a mailer that artificially lengthened and darkened my beard.
Oh yeah, can we get a picture of that real quick? I know I've shown it in other segments before. Zohran Mamdani mailer. Just take a look here. There we go. Just an easy first result. Yeah, you can like it's pretty bad. Like it's like holy shit. Crank that contrast up and Photoshop the beard out. It's nuts. I know I'm saying it's nuts a lot, but like this is some pretty serious like colorism, racism, you know? Like it is especially in the context of New York City. Like if you're in New York City, you know exactly what artificially lengthening someone's beard and like darkening like their contrast and making them look, you know, you're trying to make them look scary. You're trying to make them look like a threat because New Yorkers still carry the scars of 9/11, and like there's a lot of latent Islamophobic bigotry and, you know, some not so latent bigotry
in sending it out to voters. And it's just blatant Islamophobia, and it's explains why so many Trump donors are bankrolling that campaign. And
yeah, like okay, that's a great observation, Red Bomber in YouTube chat. I'm shocked they didn't put a turban on him too, go all out. I mean, genuinely, there must have been someone on the team that like made this artistic choice in like the Cuomo verse, right? And like, how did they decide how far to take it? Like, genuinely, like it's already really racist. Are like why did they stop? Like, why did they draw the line there? Like, it's not even in like plausible deniability territory. It's already super racist. So like, I don't know. It's like, was there like a project manager that was like, you lengthen the beard, darken his eyes more, or is this I always wonder how these decisions get made within like these conservative campaigns.
These kinds of questions on the debate stage, they pretend as if they are in relation to the real issue of anti-Semitism in our city, and yet they are weaponizing.
Oh, Jess, that is a great connection that I should have made too. It's exactly what Hillary Clinton's team did when she was running against Obama. 10,000%.
It to score political points. The truth of it is that anti-Semitism is something that has no place in this city, no place in this country. And as the mayor of this city, my responsibility will be to protect Jewish New Yorkers. And that is something that I promise to do. And it's something that I know is not just evidenced in the statistics we see, it's also in the fear that is felt by so many Jewish New Yorkers. I remember after October 7th, a friend of mine was telling me about going to his synagogue for Shabbat services and hearing the door open behind him and the chill that went up his spine as he turned around to see who it was and whether they meant to harm him. And I had a conversation just weeks ago with a Jewish man in Williamsburg who told me that he's now started to lock the same door he had kept open for decades. And it's this sense of not knowing whether one is safe. And ultimately, we need to protect each and every Jewish New Yorker, because what they deserve is what every New Yorker deserves, which is safety. And that's why at the core of our campaign's proposal to create a Department of Community Safety is to increase funding for anti-hate crime programming by 800%, the largest.
Like, can we just like talk real quick about how good he is at this? You know, like this is why the media around him has to portray him so dishonestly. It's to prevent anyone from actually seeking out any of his appearances where he like gives a clear and concise answer. And it's like, I'm sorry, he's proposing increasing the budget of the anti-hate crime division by 8-fold. He's the real deal.
Just of any campaign in this cycle, because ultimately we have to be judged by our actions, not just by the endless discourse about it all.
Yeah, you put out a statement.
Now, this is where I was just like, my eyebrows went up and I was just like, okay, this is Jon Favreau, right? But not like the Marvel Jon Favreau. I'm blanking, right? I get him and like a few other like liberal podcasters confused. John Levitt, thank you. Damn, I'm bad at this.
After October 7th, where you talked about mourning the dead in Israel and Palestine, but you also reserved any condemnation in that statement for Israel. You talked about it as an apartheid state. You did not mention Hamas and the brutal terrorist attack.
Like, I'm sorry, this is such a dog shit question and framing.
I hate Benjamin Netanyahu. I am disgusted by the atrocities being committed by Israel. But when I saw that statement, it made me worry in two ways. One is that you view it as some kind of a concession to be honest about Hamas, that it somehow hurts the Palestinian cause, the cause of peace. And two,
yeah, I feel like he literally sat down and brainstormed how to ask, do you condemn Hamas without using those words?
You as a politician who wants to lead a city with the largest population of Jewish people outside of Israel.
Just listen to his voice here.
Didn't worry enough about their sentiments either morally or just as people you need to be part of your coalition to get done these big and important things, that you weren't doing the work necessary to build the credibility and trust with that community on this issue or any other issue you're trying to win people over on. I'm just wondering what your reaction is to that.
Like, this is, having watched this entire interview prior, this is the most animated Levitt gets in this entire conversation. And it feels very artificial, and it feels like an attempt to like gotcha him by saying, you know, how can New Yorkers trust you when you aren't even willing to stand up for them in a statement after a terrorist attack in a different country? Like, it's, you know, like it seems like a very disingenuous frame.
You know, I made clear in the days after October 7th, especially as there was a protest the next day, where I said,
oh, Levitt is a shit lib, for sure, Lady Raincloud.
That I condemned the killing of civilians, and I condemned any rhetoric that made light of such killing. Because ultimately, any cause for freedom and justice and safety is one that has to be universal in its application of those things. It's why I've called October 7th what it was, which is a horrific war crime. And ultimately, the place from which all of my policies come from is a belief in international law as the foundation of how we can actually chart out a better future. And what you will see from our campaign is that we have, in fact, been able to build a coalition that reflects the beauty and the breadth
I can
of this.
smell IPAC from this interviewer.
I mean, not everything's AIPAC. I don't know. I don't know that Levitt gets money from AIPAC. I think he's just a liberal, you know, like a pretty shitty one. But like, I think it's just, I like what it is the knives are out in corporate media, and Pod Save America's pretty corporate. The knives are out for Zohran Mamdani because he's a socialist, you know? Oh, I did not know that, Sundry Clown Car. New York City has 75,000 Muslims, the largest concentration of Muslims in the United States. I did not know that. That's cool.
City, including so many Jewish New Yorkers, and that's not just evidenced by endorsements from Jewish organizations, but also that this plan I was telling you about around hate crimes, the Department of Community Safety, that's a plan that comes out of so many of those conversations. And I think to be clear, you know, I do not think that there is any relationship between condemning Hamas, which I've done time and time again, and believing in the necessity of universal human rights for each and every person, and that also including Palestinians. I think, in fact, what I've found is that most New Yorkers have that same desire for consistency and applying it to all people, and thinking that, you know, in the words of Noy Katzman, whose brother was killed by Hamas on October 7th, that we must never give up on the conviction that all life is equally precious, Israeli and Palestinian, Jewish and Arab, and we must never lose hope of a brighter, more peaceful future. And ultimately, that is what underpins this campaign and my politics at large.
See, this is why, again, they don't want you to listen to what he actually has to say, because it's so much easier to just point the finger and say, you're an anti-Semite. It's a lot harder to listen to his answer and continue to point at him and say he's an anti-Semite. Like, he's really good at this. The redirect towards essentially like, hey, not only have I condemned Hamas for this war crime, but I also believe that we should continue and move forward with hope and a fundamental like faith and bedrock built upon human rights. Like that is inarguably true. You know, like if you are a normal person and not like riddled with hate and corporate money, this is just how it should be done, you know? But this wasn't the only interview that like bothered me quite a bit, or had a segment where I was just like, wait, okay, all right. One, of course, was well, you know what? Let's break this up a little bit. I wanted to introduce one of the ads that Zohran's campaign has run is specifically about kind of the history of New York City's ferry system. And I think it's interesting, and it's an interesting response to the free busing criticisms.
Take it in. A true icon of New York, the Staten Island Ferry. The Staten Island Ferry is a beacon on the waters of New York City, shuttling about 45,000 people a day. And the best part? It's free. For decades after opening in 1898, the Staten Island Ferry was just a nickel. Then, in the 1970s, the fare rose to a quarter. And in 1990, 50 cents. But since 1997, the ferry's been free. And New Yorkers have come to know it as a dependable means of transit. And it's the best way to see the Statue of Liberty. So when people say buses can never be free, don't ask them to take a hike. Ask them to take the ferry. On June 24th, let's get some more free transit.
Like, I mean, That's great. Also, I don't remember who, but I saw someone say something along the lines of like if Zohran Mamdani doesn't win the mayoral election, he has a very promising career as somebody who could like do narration for like historical documentaries. Like I would listen to Zohran Mamdani talk about the history of New York City. I would listen to that. I think that'd be good. But the other interview I wanted to talk about, another like criticism I wanted to talk about, was from the Bulwark. And I've made it no secret that like I have some pretty strong feelings about the Bulwark. It's an outlet of essentially never Trump Republicans. They have, they have a few non-former Republicans. Like they have some like centrists. They have some, I think, some left-leaning folks who their audience hates. But I've talked about how they're not our friends. And if you're on the left, they are not our friends. They are temporary allies against Donald Trump at best. Okay? As an outlet. And I found this part of the interview both infuriating and fascinating because, again, it gives Zohran Mamdani a chance to actually portray his policies correctly in the face of a hostile interviewer. Someone who's clearly not convinced by any of his arguments. But I think even in the face of that, he makes good points and is able to argue for his policy proposals effectively. So let's take a look at that real quick.
Concern. We'll move through them quickly. Okay?
Let's go.
Are you ready? Number one is, as I mentioned earlier, capitalism. You tweeted, taxation isn't theft, capitalism is. You also want to seize the means of produce production in New York City. I would like to hear your thoughts on both those topics.
Yes, well, I would say judging me by my tweets sends me down a long road.
I have some bad tweets too, but it's right there. You want to be mayor?
Yeah,
you're saying capitalism is theft. That seems bad to me.
What I've said over the course of this campaign is what I would focus on, and what my critiques of capitalism have been and continue to be is that this inequality is a feature of it.
Yeah, just understand that, like, fundamentally that question is, why are you anti-American? That is kind of the framework of the question, right? Like, in America, it has been treated as, sacrilegious to criticize capitalism for so long that it's just kind of ingrained in a lot of Americans. And so it's not a surprising question to get from someone who is like a neoliberal or someone who's like, capitalism's good, it's just gone a little bit too far. I think it's great how he answers this question, especially in light of, he immediately answers here inequality and capitalism being linked. And I wanted to throw this up. Got to get you a nice little graph to illustrate the point he's trying to make. Where are you at? Where are you at, graph? I know you're coming up. Here we go. Bookmark this graph from globalinequality.org. Okay? Who benefits from global economic growth? Gains in individual annual income from 1980 to 2023 by global income percentile. And you can see that the richest 1% captured 54% of global growth total, and the richest 5% combined captured 70% of global growth. When we talk about how, industrialization and, robotics and, computers have sped up and made people working within the system more and more and more productive, despite stagnant wages for the last 60 years, this is where all of the money went. This is where all of the benefit to the global population went. It went to the top 1 to 5% of society. This is an unsustainable method of growth. And not only that, but this is a system that prioritizes and makes more powerful the people who are benefiting the most from it. And so they reap all of those benefits, and then they use those benefits to maintain their monopoly on the benefits, essentially. And when I talk about capitalism essentially being a pyramid scheme to concentrate wealth in the upper echelons of society, the upper 1%, the upper 5%, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the trend of capitalism. This is not capitalism without without restraint. This is just capitalism. Capitalism will always seek to do this. This is globally the effect of it. Understand that inequality is exactly what he's talking about when he's asked about this.
And if we do not have a focus on how we actually extend that understanding of dignity that every New Yorker deserves and make it a reality, if you talk to New Yorkers, you'll say, yeah, everyone deserves public education, being able to go to a library, sanitation. But then there are certain things that we agree are just as critical, and yet we allow people to be priced in or out of those things, whether we're talking about housing or we're talking about produce. And I think that comes to your second point, is our proposal to create a pilot program for a network of municipal-owned grocery stores. Now, this is a program, to be clear, that would be one store in each borough, 5 stores.
Which, that's a great plan. There are food deserts in New York City where it is hard to go get your groceries. If you are poor in New York City, you don't have a car to go and drive someplace to get your groceries. You are limited to where you can get on foot or maybe on bicycle. You might have to walk and then carry those groceries for miles if you live in a food desert.
Stores across New York City, it would cost
So we have
$60
5
million.
communist stores. This might be an interesting test case to see how poorly it does compared to.
But look,
neighbors.
I
see what I mean? Interesting test case to see how poorly it does. Which is an idea and a statement that can only be born out of someone who has never seen the data on the fact that there are municipally run grocery stores across America already that are doing great, that are serving the communities that they exist in admirably. They exist to solve problems that capitalism is incapable of solving on its own, because if capitalism was capable of solving it, it would be solved. There would not be food deserts there. I'm wondering what Tim's, I think his name's Tim, what his position would be on the fact that, these people live in a place without a grocery store already. New York City already subsidizes their grocery stores to exist in, neighborhoods that they wouldn't otherwise exist in. Is it just we need to increase the subsidies to private corporations that are going to pocket that and, give it to their CEOs? Why is that, the only solution? Like how capitalism deals with food deserts, chat. First you have your chain grocery store enters the chat, right? Then eventually they corner the market, they raise their prices, things get more expensive. And then, a Walmart rolls into town and they have lower prices than the other grocery store, and it becomes like the fancy chain grocery store. And the poor people go to Walmart. But then if the wealth inequality keeps getting bigger and bigger, then there are people who are too poor to work to go and shop at the Walmart for food. What happens then is there's only really one additional answer that capitalism offers, and that's Dollar General. Dollar General, their explicit business plan, and I have a video on my channel going over this, but their explicit business plan is essentially to squeeze the people, like if Walmart is a store for people who have, $25 in their pocket, Dollar General is a store for people who have $5 in their pocket. It's for the people who are down to their last buck, because you can look at the actual data of what gets sold and how much product comes out through those stores. Dollar Generals are inherently predatory. If you measure up what you get from a Dollar General versus what you get from a traditional grocery store, you get way less for your buck at a Dollar General. It is just a predatory system that makes things more expensive for the poorest people in society. It's like that Terry Pratchett quote about boots. If you have enough money for good leather boots, they might last you your entire life. But if you can't afford the leather boots, then you have to buy cardboard boots and replace them every 3 years. And over the span of your lifetime, you're going to wind up paying exponentially more for those cardboard boots than people who just bought the one pair. It's how poverty is more expensive.
I think no matter how you think about the idea,
Yeah.
I do think that there should be more room for reasonable policy experimentation in our cities and in our country, where we actually test out our ideas. And if they work, they work. And if they don't work, c'est la vie. Then the idea was wrong. But the reason I think it would work is that this is less than half the cost of what the city's already spending on subsidies.
I wish he would incorporate into his rhetoric that it has worked other places. It's not like this is a groundbreaking new strat of like municipally owned grocery stores. There are other places doing it already with great success. I do think that his argument isn't bad. I just wish he would incorporate, other examples of success in there.
Subsidizing corporate supermarkets through a program called City Fresh. The city's set to spend about $140 million through those subsidies.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come with a guarantee of cheaper groceries, doesn't come with a requirement to accept SNAP or WIC or to engage in collective bargaining. And over the more than 10 years that it's been in operation, we see just a few more than a dozen stores that have actually received this. And ultimately, the reason I think this could work is it's worked in Kansas. There's been a feasibility study done in Chicago about the urgency of it and that it can actually be implemented. And that we are here in a city where if you're making $40K a year or $200K a year, you'll still hear that sticker shock of going to the grocery store, of not knowing if you can actually afford the same thing that you used to
I'm
be
with
able
you
to.
I'm with you on the test. I'll just say so I lived in Oakland in a low income neighborhood in Oakland for a while, a couple of years ago, and they put one of the community stores in those that the city was subsidizing. One of the kind of probably seems like similar.
Oh, Jesus, Cynicism Inc. In my country, we're actually facing a crisis because basic groceries are so expensive that one fridge refill costs up to a tenth of our average paychecks. And the obvious solution is a nationalized supermarket chain, which we had until 1991. That's interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about a nationalized supermarket chain versus a locally owned chain, though I can see the upsides. For example, I've frequently been an advocate for federalized food banks, where the federal government would take on the cost of actually shipping excess crops or excess goods to different food banks. Because often when I dig into the issue, it seems like the logistics of transport are one of the main roadblocks of getting food to places where people who need to rely on food banks would need it. And it seems to me that that's a cost that the federal government could easily bear. Maybe in a similar vein to what you're proposing. Might also depend on the size of country. That's very true. Yeah, heart splinters. My main pause when hearing provincial or state grocery stores, for the individual states here in America, is that what would inevitably happen is that red states would torpedo those municipal, not municipal, but those state-owned stores. They deliberately sabotage them because that's what red states do here in America. But I think that possibility is a lot less likely in the American context if you have it owned by the city. And because Republicans will often seek to attack things on the state level, but on the local level, those things, they like those things. They feel like, oh, well, my city council is more beholden to me, and so that's we did a town grocery store, and that's good because we did it, as opposed to the state.
Similar to the City Fresh program that you were talking about, and it was it was a half mile from the Walmart, which had much cheaper food in the end, and the place shut down, right? It just didn't. So sometimes, it's a question of whether or not you can actually make it cheaper, right? Because in a lot of times, some of the bigger chains will have scale, and it might not work.
And I think when you're talking about Walmart, there's also larger national questions about laws that haven't been followed about ensuring that there's equal pricing across groceries and these kind of larger warehouse providers. But I think the second part of this argument that sometimes gets lost is that even in a city like New York, there are food deserts that are disproportionately impacting Black and brown New Yorkers, where, I represent the largest public housing development.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, if you're arguing like, oh, well, you might be able to get things cheaper in a different borough, like, do you have any idea how much effort it would take to like go to a different a different borough to like get groceries? If you're just opening up a municipal grocery store in a food desert, people are going to go to that grocery store, even if it's slightly more expensive than a Walmart or something, a Whole Foods. Though I imagine with New York City's like population, tax base, etc., like they could probably leverage some lower prices. Just a thought.
North America, Queensbridge houses
Yep.
in Western Queens. I have constituents who ask me, why can I find 5 fast food restaurants in a 5-block radius, but I can't find a place where I can afford good produce? And I think that when you're starting with 5, 1 in each borough, it also allows you to solve multiple problems at the same time. It's not to say that the vision here is we will
I
not
bet
stop
this
until there is
motherfucker
a...
could be president in 3 election cycles.
Genuinely, one of the things I think that if we get him as mayor of New York, I'm really, really looking forward to, one, Richie Torres not running for governor of New York, and two, and two, seeing where he goes in his political career, because like I think he can actually pull off his policy proposals. I think they're good ideas, and I think he might be able to get like the city on board with them.
municipal owned grocery store on every block. It's that we're trying to solve a problem.
Got it. Okay.
And how do we?
Yeah, it also exactly, J-Beck. It also means good, well-paying government jobs in these different areas. That's a good thing.
So.
Let me go to my number 2 issue of what concerns me about
Hit it.
you. Other mayors of your
He can't be president. He wasn't born here. Look, all I'm saying is Cenk Uygur ran so that Zohran could soar. Look, by the time he's considering a run for president, he'll have enough political capital to change the Constitution.
your ilk, whatever you want to call them, DSA, squattish, progressive, aren't exactly crushing it. Brandon Johnson is in Chicago. I've seen a poll this year with him at 6% approval and another one with him at 14% approval. So there's a lot of Democrats in Chicago that are pretty unhappy with him. That's not just the Republicans. What?
Look at this guy who's similar to how you would be as a mayor. He's pretty shitty, isn't he? Fuck off, Tim.
What do you think about what Brandon Johnson's doing in Chicago? Do you have a model of a progressive mayor you think is doing a good job?
I think Mayor Wu has been doing a very good job in Boston, and she's someone who has been an inspiration of mine, even just in my focus on fare-free bus transit. That was built out of, in part, the results we saw when she made a number of bus routes free in Boston. One of them was Route 28. By making it free, they decreased the dwell time at each bus stop by 23%. So it was showcasing, again, that you do this, it's not just economic relief, it's also the speed of this bus, the public safety of this bus. And, to Cameron's point earlier,
I love that the question is, why do you think people will like you? One of the most liked political candidates in New York City history. Why do you think people will like you as mayor? Well, I'm going to make the actual lived experience of average New Yorkers better, is a pretty good response.
I am 2 years younger than Mayor Wu was when she ran for that same position. And I think when we're thinking about a new generation of leadership, having a model that works is important. The other point that I would make is that oftentimes critiques of someone on the left's administration is seen as if it is one that has to be, that is reflective of an inability of that ideological bend to govern. And yet when we have someone so proudly...
This guy is probably the only politician that women would trust with their drink.
That's oh my god. Top tier Zohran Mamdani campaign meme. Women trust him more than the bear. Rank Zohran Mamdani 1. I'd let him hold my purse. Olympians, thank you for the $5 dono.
...a centrist like Eric Adams. His failures are considered to be...
maybe Brad Lander... I think Brad Lander would probably be ranked over the bear, but it's Zohran, Lander, bear to me.
Personal ones, as opposed to political failures of his ideology.
Eric somehow is still more popular than Brandon Johnson, which is concerning, I would think, if you're Brandon.
Eric is a very talented communicator.
He's the mayor of the Tel Aviv of America. Okay, sorry.
We'll watch it. Tel Aviv sensitive. We're going to get to Israel next. It's the last 5.
Brad is tied with the bear.
final topic, but just really quick on Brandon Johnson. I just want to give one specific example of something that worries me about progressive type mayors, right?
Please.
So we were talking about housing earlier, right? And so in March, Brandon Johnson tweeted that Chicago invested $11 billion to build 10,000 more units of affordable housing. That's $1 million a unit. Like, that's just way more expensive than market rate housing. And one of the reasons was, if you look at how they did the projects, they had these goals, you know, and if you, to get a project,
Yes,
right? Okay, you've seen this, right? So it's like, you got 10 points if it's green. That's good. I like green. You got 11 points if it was BIPOC. You got another 11 points if there were women on the development team. I like BIPOCs and women building things, but like, you only got 3 points if you contained cost. And so it just feels like there's like,
You know, can we just like for a second? I love, right, that like this guy's like $11 billion for only 10,000 units. Huh. That's no good. And well, let's just take a quick look here. In 2016, Obama will seek $11 billion for homeless families. I don't know. I think guys like Tim, well, maybe not like Tim. He's a never Trumper. So maybe not. Maybe wouldn't have been on board with the Obama train. But like, you're complaining like, oh, well, this mayor got 11 billion, but only got like 10,000 units. And it's kind of like, well, you know, that $1 billion that Obama like put out there is like mostly to housing vouchers to get people housed, but it was also to build like 10,000 new units, which, discretionary spending on 10,000 new housing vouchers. So like, Obama isn't even building new units, vouchers for existing units that go directly into landlord coffers. I don't know. It seems kind of shitty to say, like, look at this mayor. He did $11 billion and only got 10,000 new units. And it's like, that's not a great return on investment, but also, like, it's more than a lot of people have been doing. And I just want to point this out there because I feel like it's worth pointing out. The way a lot of liberals talk about housing, it's as if someone like the housing gets filled and then it stays filled in perpetuity. Like, okay, you spent a lot of money to build units. Those units don't just go away, right? They stick around to be used
I have
for the
seen what
foreseeable
United
future.
States project housing look like, and in my opinion, it is very substandard.
Yeah, but also, I think we can do it better. I think we can do it cheaper. And I think that honestly, a lot of what happens is that a lot of the money is spent on like the overhead for private corporations that have profit motives and have investors and want returns on those. And so what ends up happening is a lot of people skim, and the costs go through the roof. And then there are zoning laws. And so like, I think that there is a lot that someone can do, especially the mayor of New York City, that can do to be able to build new housing, to be able to, you know, accommodate folks. And then that housing is there and we can build more in the future, you know? And yeah, the projects are not great, but other countries, and notably other countries with big cities, have been able to effectively eliminate homelessness by building gorgeous, lovely, sustainable housing for people who would otherwise be homeless. And it's just, we can do it. It's just a matter of political will. All I'm saying is that, like, I don't think what Obama did was anywhere near enough, but I think there's a lot we can do on a local level to build housing, especially if that local level is New York City.
Like this priority miss sometimes with progressive folks who are like so want to keep everybody in the coalition happy over, you know, getting, you know, doing affordable housing or whatever for working class folks in the city. What do you say to that critique?
I think that it is not a model that is working to its intent. The intent is to build as much affordable housing. And if that is the amount of money it costs to build, then you will simply not be able to build to the extent that's required. And it's interesting in that, you know, that cost per unit that you're highlighting is one of a critique of a public sector position. And then also here in New York City, we've had a very different style of incentivizing the production of affordable housing through tax incentives for developers that has seen similar costs of more than $1 million oftentimes for the creation of an affordable unit. And I think that this is also where earlier in the conversation we were having, on the left, we have to care about excellence in public service, because if our whole vision for affordable housing is unable to actually match the scale of this crisis, then it's not worth its salt. And to me, I think we also have to ask ourselves larger questions of how do we drive down the cost of so much of what we build? Because it's very tempting to look at the Second Avenue subway being the most expensive subway mile in the history of the world and say, oh, this is because of labor costs, when in reality, Paris has just as strong, if not stronger, labor unions, and their cost per mile is significantly lower. And I think a lot of this comes
there weren't 100
from
consultants getting paid.
Yeah,
I mean, he's not wrong about that one. Like, again, there are a lot of leeches on this system that prevent us from actually being able to get the construction done, because it's not the actual construction that is costing the most money here. The money is getting like sucked out in a million different ways, and it balloons the cost of these projects.
And I think that's the thing, in the first phase of the Second Avenue subway, we spent more on consulting than construction. And I think this comes back to there's an addiction we have to contracting, to consulting. But I think also what we need to do more of is say that this is the amount of money we're spending, and we have to work backwards from this. How do we ensure that we are actually able to innovate in the public sector? Because there are examples of that. The mini fridge in the United States exists because NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority, put out an RFP for a specific size fridge that could fit in a public housing. That is also a story of innovation, but that story is lost when the larger story is one of betraying the hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers who live in that housing in substandard conditions.
Right, last one, then we'll let Good Twink close it out. All right, so we get to the Israel. We mentioned the Islamophobia. Obviously, we also have to be worried about the uptick in anti-Semitism. And there's one thing in particular that frustrates me when talking with folks on the left, and that is like downplaying this conversation about how there obviously is anti-Semitism on the right, but there's anti-Semitism coming from the left and coming from these protests. And one example I think of is this phrase, globalize the intifada, which is a very popular phrase at protests on the left.
Now, I want to let you know that, number one, when I covered this, when I watched this the first time, I was just like, fuck, man, like just another, like these attempts to like gotcha him as like an anti-Semite are crazy, and I think his response is so fucking good.
Maybe some people say that phrase with good intent, but there's certainly some people who are saying that phrase with violent intent. So I wonder what you think about that, about the phrase globalized intifada and what we've seen as some anti-Semitism coming from the left-wing protesters.
The first thing, as you were saying, is anti-Semitism is a real issue in our city. And it's one that can be captured in statistics, the ones that you're citing. It's also one that you will feel in conversations you have with Jewish New Yorkers across the city. And I remember one conversation I had with a friend of mine after the horrific war crime of October 7th. He was telling me that he went for Shabbat services at his temple, and he was facing forward when he heard the door open, and he turned back with a chill going up his spine because he didn't know who was coming in. That's more than a year ago. And then just a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with a Jewish man in Williamsburg who...
Bisadu, he's saying... I guess I should have clarified there. Tim is asking this question specifically to paint the protests against the genocide that is ongoing in Gaza as anti-Semitic. And because Zohran is associated with those protests, by extension, to paint him as an anti-Semite. So hopefully that clears up what they're saying. In America, one of the common through lines through corporate media has been that like protesters here are anti-Semitic.
Sponsor podcast.
As far as I know, Olympians, no. This is just a very common belief in the corporate media ecosystem. It's a convenient bludgeon that is often deployed against socialists, and that's why one of the reasons I compare Zohran's campaign to Bernie Sanders in 2016 is because they're deploying a lot of the same criticism. The revisiting the anti-Semitism, well, like they also, said that Bernie Sanders, who's Jewish, was an anti-Semite. No, this guy's just right-wing. I mean, he is right-wing. but also so is the liberal mainstream media. Liberal.
Told me that the same door he would keep unlocked for decades is one that he now locks out of a fear of what could happen in his own neighborhood. And I think that this is something that has to be the focus of the next mayoral administration, is not just talking about it, but tackling it. And these are the conversations that have informed our commitment around increasing funding for anti-hate crime programming by 800% in our Department of Community Safety. And in the, to the question of language that's being used, I am someone who I would say
this is really good.
Am less comfortable with the idea of banning the use of certain words, and that I think it is more evocative of a Trump-style approach to how to lead a country. And I think especially when we've seen...
Sure, but does that just make you uncomfortable? Like the phrase globalized intifada, from the river to the sea, does that make you uncomfortable? Or do you think...
Okay, those are different. Those are super different.
They're not really.
Like different genres.
I'm sorry, I'm asking Zohran. Then they're not really different to me. And to some people, they're not different.
I know people for whom those things mean
to some people, they're not different. To some people, they're not different.
Very different things. And to me, ultimately, what I hear in so many is a desperate desire for equality and equal rights in standing up for Palestinian human rights. And I think what's difficult also is that the very word has been used by the Holocaust Museum when translating the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising into Arabic, because it's a word that means struggle.
Sure.
And as a Muslim man who grew up post 9/11, I'm all too familiar in the way in which Arabic words can be twisted, can be distorted, can be used to justify any kind of meaning.
Yep.
And I think that's where it leaves me with a sense that what we need to do is focus on keeping Jewish New Yorkers safe, and question of the permissibility of language is something that I haven't ventured.
Cool.
That's such a good answer. Do you have any idea how that was like a mass, like for me, someone who cares about rhetoric a lot in political communication, that was masterfully done. It was really good. So, asked about globalize the intifada, he just points out intifada is just a word for struggle. The United States Holocaust Museum uses that word, and he's right. He's correct. And not only that, he's able to point that out, and that it doesn't make him uncomfortable, because what he cares about is equal rights, and that he's not going to get bogged down in the language here, because that language is used by everyone in Arabic, and what we're talking about is a fight fundamentally for the fundamental equality and human rights of Palestinians. It's just really great because, one, it centers the conversation on what should be centered. The humanity of Palestinians. And not only does it do that, but it's also able to disarm the phrase itself, and also to point out that, what you're really doing here is that did I lose my voice? No. But what you're really doing here is essentially dabbling in anti-Arab bigotry. It really does boil down to, that word is Arabic, therefore it's scary. I don't know. I think that's a really, really good way of reframing the conversation. And I think that more people need to be paying attention to how Zohran Mamdani responds to these hostile questions, because the liberal majority in this country, they're not going to stop with Zohran Mamdani. Other people who are coming up who believe in fundamental equality and worthiness of human beings, they're going to need to be able to answer the same question. Yeah, Vicky Klee, they did make "God is great" in Arabic a scary phrase. Yeah, I don't know. I find it fascinating. I wanted to close out this segment with Zohran Mamdani's speech from his rally with AOC. So let's take a look at that together. Forgive me, the only upload I could find is a vertical slice, and I don't know why, but this is the only upload I could find. If someone has the full screen version, I'd appreciate it. Is it going to be this quiet? Do I have to turn it up?
Thank you.
Hi. Glad I caught you in the middle of the day.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Good evening! New York City, how we feeling?
Maybe a bit too loud?
Are we ready to win on June 20th?
Yeah, maybe a bit too loud. Okay. Let's. All right. We went too far. Went too far. Should have just been at 200. All right. Message received.
24th! Thank you to our MC, the Kid Mero. Thank you to the elected officials, labor, and movement leaders who've joined us tonight. And thank you to my friend, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She has shown us time and again that we can fight and that we can win. She is a model for this country in how to lead with integrity. And what an honor it is to have her endorsement. And what an honor it is to look out onto this crowd and to see the city I love. There are over 3,000 New Yorkers here this evening, and thousands more watching from home. New Yorkers who believe that living here shouldn't be a daily grind of anxiety. New Yorkers who are ready to turn the page on years of corruption and incompetence. To reject the politics of distraction and fear, of big money and small vision, of cowardice and collaboration in the face of Trump's authoritarianism. New Yorkers who are ready for a new generation of leadership that puts working people first. My brothers and sisters, you are the beating heart of this campaign. You have climbed 6th-floor walk-ups and braved the pouring rain to canvass our city. You have shared our message with the very New Yorkers you've lived alongside for years, but never had the chance to meet.
I know it's a small thing, but I really appreciate that he calls them brothers and sisters. It's been a while since I heard a politician refer to constituents as like fellow workers, you know, like it's like he's not on high, he's not lording over them, he's not some political dynast. He is just a man who wants to make things better for his community.
And make no mistake, this campaign is reaching every corner of this city. I see the work each of you do when New Yorkers wave excitedly from bus windows and shout, "Freeze the rent!" from moving cars. I see it.
Can we also just acknowledge that the rent is too damn high guy from years ago, like, was beloved for just saying the rent is too damn high, and then almost no one ran on lowering rents? This is like the first like major guy I can remember who's talking about lowering actual rent costs.
I see it when volunteers who have never participated in politics before dedicate their every Sunday night to spreading our message. And I see it when thousands of New Yorkers post proud screenshots of their first ever ballots. And I feel it when the uncles and aunties who felt long abandoned by a broken status quo pull me aside to tell me that finally they're excited to believe again. We stand on the verge of a victory that will resonate across the country and the world.
He's got the unks and aunts on lock. Let's go.
Make no mistake, this victory will be historic not just because of who I am, a Muslim immigrant and a proud democratic socialist.
Also, can we just take a moment and be like, this man is running as a democratic socialist. If he can win New York City, like, all the more reason to retake the socialist label here in America. I know people who shy away from it because the word might scare some people, but like, genuinely, what needs to be done is, hey, let's rebuild that brand. let's rebuild that that value proposition. Let's return to tradition, in a sense, and in fact buoy the original meaning of that term. Let's stand by our brothers and sisters here in America, the working class of the world, you know, the tired, trodden masses, the people who have time and time again been welcomed here in America, and let's make it happen.
But for what we will do, make this city affordable for everyone. I think of a woman I met on the BX33 in the Bronx a few years ago. As I sat next to her, she told me, I used to love New York, but now it's just where I live. We're going to make this city one where working people can love it once again. That is who I am thinking about tonight, the New Yorkers who make this city run. Because after this rally, as many of us sleep, millions of our neighbors will step out onto moonlit streets across our city. Nurses working the night shift will put on their scrubs and save lives. City workers will clean subway stations and pick up our trash.
The primary, Hundo, is in 3 days. It's on the 24th. Going to try and get this out tomorrow, the 22nd. It's the last ditch effort to get people knocking doors and phone banking.
Office buildings will be made new again as the midnight shift scrubs and polishes in the dark. Many of these New Yorkers are immigrants who traveled to this city from faraway countries with nothing in their pockets except a dream of a better life. And even more New Yorkers will spend the entire night tirelessly working and return home carrying the burden that it still isn't enough. The sun rises, the bills continue to climb, and the stress never seems to fade. If New York truly is the city that never sleeps, we deserve a mayor who fights for those of us who labor at every single hour of the day. I will be that mayor. And I want to tell you that when we launched...
Dude is just so good at this.
Thank you, my friends. When we launched this campaign on a cold October evening, few thought we could win. Only a couple more could even pronounce my name. Andrew Cuomo still can't. The so-called experts said we would be lucky to break 5%.
God.
But I always knew that we would build a campaign just like this. So when a disgraced former governor questions whether or not we can lead this city, I look at our campaign and I know the answer. Over 1 million doors knocked, more than 40,000 volunteers. that the pundits and politicians had written off, now on the precipice of toppling a political dynasty. And because of that, we will win a city that we can afford. But what does winning look like? It looks like a rent-stabilized retiree who wakes up on the first of every month, knowing the amount they're going to pay hasn't soared since the month before. Together, New York, we're going to freeze the... It looks like a single mom who can drop her kids off at school and know she won't be late to work because her bus will arrive on time and cost nothing at all.
Let's go.
Together, New York, we're going to make buses fast and free. It looks like a young family that doesn't have to move to the suburbs because childcare doesn't cost more than college. In fact, it's free. Together, New York, we're going to deliver universal. And it looks like safety for everyone. Whether you're on the street, riding the subway, or a house of worship, with our Department of Community Safety. We will invest.
I know we've talked a lot about his policies over the course of this segment, but like, do you guys understand how many more people would feel safe enough calling like a public services line for like mental health checks on their loved ones? How many more people would feel comfortable like engaging with that element of service from the government versus calling the cops, knowing that like if you're calling like a wellness check on someone, it could result in them being shot to death? Like I just, it's really hard to overstate how good that would be just on a basic human level, even if there were not financial incentives to do so.
In the mental health services that we know work and
Damn, Dr. Ritchie says when you call a cop, you're calling a gun. 1000%. Dr. Ritchie totally nailing it.
Tackle the rise in hate crimes that fill too many Jewish and Muslim New Yorkers with fear. We will stand up for small businesses and take on bad landlords and greedy corporations. We will make sure our public schools are excellent. Because our kids deserve better than crowded classrooms and neglected facilities. We will do all of this from a city hall that is accountable and transparent to the New Yorkers it proudly serves. And I will be a mayor who doesn't bow down to corporate interest, doesn't take his orders from billionaires, and sure as hell doesn't let ICE steal our neighbors from their homes.
I'm sorry, but like the fact that every single Democratic politician isn't currently out there giving speeches to this effect boggles my mind. Like, even if you're an establishment politician, even if you are like a milquetoast Dem, you should be out there giving a speech that at least says that. And so many Democrats aren't even living up to the bare minimum bar. Look at that reaction.
There are no kings. There are no kings in America. Whether that's Donald Trump, Andrew Cuomo, or the Republican billionaires who fund both of their campaigns.
Damn, dude. Get their asses.
For too long, New Yorkers have learned not to expect much from those they elect. Failure has become familiar. Make no mistake, our democracy isn't just under attack from the outside. It's been eroded from within as well. When politicians give you crumbs time and time again and tell you to feel satisfied, it should come as no surprise that many among us have lost faith. But this campaign has given hope again through our vision that every person deserves a good and dignified life. And that government must deliver an agenda of abundance that puts the interests of the 99% over the 1%.
What I really like there is that he drops the abundance thing, right? And I feel like the way in which he drops it is like a complete, not like theft. Well, maybe like outright theft of the helm of the abundance agenda, and steers it into like socialist waters, you know? Like the Ezra Klein abundance liberalism thing, he's absolutely aware of it, and he's been asked about it in interviews, and his response is, yeah, I support changing like zoning regulations in order to make it easier to build stuff. And like that's the depth to which he takes it, right? Which is not the direction that the Ezra Klein types want to take it. They want to take it in the neoliberal direction, where it's effectively corporations will do what they will. They'll have their way with you and your lands and your goods, right? But instead, he's saying, yeah, we're gonna have abundance there's enough for everyone. There's enough to go around. We can all have and help each other. And it's all about sticking it to the 1%, man, and just steers it all back into populist waters. And I think that's a really, really, really politically savvy thing to do.
That is why Republican billionaires are spending millions of dollars to stop.
Yeah, maybe an inversion would be the word, a proper word choice. 3 raccoons in a trench coat.
To stop us. They know that this election isn't just about the future of our city. It's about the future of our democracy. Whether billionaires and massive corporations can simply buy our elections. Trust me, they will try. Over the next 10 days, you will not be able to turn on your TV, check your mail, or watch a video on YouTube without seeing an attack on our movement. There will be lies.
Yes, weaponizing abundance against its masters. Exactly.
Stoke fear and suspicion, even hate. And behind the—
Wait, does Zohran have any policies related to zoning laws? Yeah, one of his stances on housing is to build 200,000 new units, and he's elaborated on that policy because it's not as much as, well, here, actually, just a decent aside, a moment to go back to something we covered earlier. Was it here?
And I think it might have been the same where you talked about LaGuardia. And basically you were asked, where is an issue where you've been wrong? And you talked about the need, along with investing in public housing, to support more private development. And, it led many to wonder whether you've been abundance pilled. And I know, and based on how online you are, you know what I mean. Are you abundance pilled? Are you somebody who, where are you on abundance?
I think that there's a lot that conversation has brought, specifically around how hard or easy are we making it to actually tackle some of these issues. And I think sometimes it gets simplified and caricatured, but fundamentally to me, the thing that's been most interesting is introducing a new lens of analysis around the bureaucracy. And I think oftentimes the very things that we should care about on the left, we have allowed the right to make their own concerns. Bureaucracy, efficiency, waste. If you care about public goods, public service, these have to be your primary focuses, because any evidence of that inefficiency is then a justification for the elimination of the public sector. And I think similarly, if you think about the language of quality of life, it's often been understood as if it's a conservative concern. But in fact, that's a concern at the bedrock of every working class person's life. They want to have a good quality of life. And these are not things in tension with our principles. In fact, they're the fulfillment of them. And I think abundance is really interesting in in its really bringing that focus around housing particularly, and even just the whole thinking of single stairwell versus dual stairwell, right? What are the very details that we often elide over that have a big impact on whether or not something can actually be brought to pencil?
Yeah, because when I went and looked at your
Yeah, so I think that's a decent response. You know, I do want to. There was just one aspect here.
Or some watchdog described it as the worst landlord in the city, and so it's like, how do you you talk about all these, the importance of reinvesting in these institutions, and I'm just curious how you think about the need to reform them as well.
I think it's critical. I don't think you can do one without the other, and I think that it is tempting at times to think of everything as a funding.
Wait, maybe I might have gotten two things mixed up. I think this was the abundance question. There's a part in this interview about housing.
I think the and you can't separate that from the fact that
No. There's a part where like the host asks him a question about like building and like how Zoran's in favor of 200,000 units, but Zelnor Myri is in favor of 1 million units. I don't know, like 1 million units seems better. I forget which interview it's in, and he talks more about like zoning laws and stuff like that. But I feel like I'm now way too far afield. Let's go back to the actual.
Those lies are the same billionaires who put Donald Trump back in the White House. But we know that this movement is more powerful than their money. That's what New Yorkers have already begun to say today at polling places across this city. And 10 days from now, on June 24th, we will speak in one voice. And to everyone who pulls me aside to whisper with the best intentions, you have already won. I am sorry, but the days of moral victories are over. And as my father told me years ago, when the right wins power, the left writes a great book. Those days are over too. Because this is a campaign that is going to win on June 24th.
Let's go.
And it's thanks to each and every one of you. On election night, after the polls have closed and the results have come in, we will go home. And as we close our eyes, the days of countless others will only be beginning. Doors in Jackson Heights and Parkchester and Bay Ridge and Soundview will open at midnight. New Yorkers will leave their homes and commute under streetlights to work, where they'll drive buses and mop floors and bake bread. For some, this will feel like any other night. But for so many more, thanks to all of you, it will feel like the dawn of a new day.
This election is on June 24th, 3 days from now, Vaughn 400.
And when the sun finally climbs above the horizon, that light will seem brighter than ever before. Because we, my friends, are going to win the city we deserve. And it's going to be one we can afford. One where we can dream again. And for that, I must say, thank you.
He's like the perfect. He's the apex politician. He's so good at this, guys.
Yeah.
What an absolute Chad. Now, folks, do not forget, all right? Do not forget that you can volunteer for this man at zohranfornyc.com. And here is the link to phone bank. You can phone bank from anywhere in the United States. And you can also knock doors if you are in New York City. So please schedule some time, like a couple hours, to do some phone banking. It's really easy. You get a script, you get talking points. They give you likely voters. You're not going to be calling and like getting cussed out. It's going to be a fun experience, and it is going to be a valuable experience for you and for the campaign. It's something you can talk about. If you can put it on your resume as like a bona fide, like get out there and get to work, folks, because it's crunch time. Early voting is over tomorrow, June 22nd, and on June 24th is the election. So you have by the time this segment gets out, you have 24 hours to get into the fight and phone bank or door knock. So make those hours count. That being said, let's get Zohran Mamdani elected, folks. And comment, and subscribe. Do the things. You know, the channel things.
Riverboat Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, daily, and plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack.